It gripped you by the throat. Time fell on you. Slow, fat raindrops that were cold against your skin, that are cold against our skin. The day's the sound of a drum in church. This can be a hard world to live in, so drink whiskey by the garden door. You lived so close to the sea you could smell the shoreline when you did. Feel the salt on your skin. Sometimes it's hard to take it all in. So live between the claps of thunder, exist. Let the days roll themselves underneath you and knock you off your feet. Resist sleep in darkened rooms. And after the storm, leave the sediment to settle in your heart, knees weak with the weight of it. You couldn't move your mouth to speak, and why should you start when it's all so inevitable? It's the drip down the pint glass that dampens the beer mat and makes the air humid around you. In this world, we so rarely open our hands to the sky to ask for help. I ran away from it, away to the big lights, like we could run away from our feelings, like a train ride was enough, like it wouldn't catch up with us. Away was where our lives were supposed to change. Smoking cigarettes on the balconies of overpriced, privately owned tenement blocks with numb mouths and cold hands. Parties in flats with ceilings bloated from damp they break the bank to live in. When we moved to our place, we sugar-soaked the walls for 3 days and still the smell remained. So we lay in peeling sheets with sitcoms on repeat. Warm skin, drinking. Hearts beating at their own rhythm, but somehow still in sync. We laughed, though, and said we'd made it. We didn't know the past could chase us. When I think of you, I pull the skin around my nails until it bleeds. Grandmother's blessings, we used to call them. I hope you knew what you meant to me. And I know more than ever now it's hard to say how we feel. I remember hot car seats in summertime sticking to the backs of our knees. Mixtapes in Ford Mondeos, I have to learn to speak, because when I do, I feel you close to me. In a city where we can't stand to be close to others, we'll move seats on night buses, we won't touch shoulders. Compassion's like this abstract word we throw around pub gardens 3 rounds in. Hunched over pints like used up greaseproof paper with sun-sore skin, and it's fine, we're all fine, we're getting on with it. So I write you down. With biro on my fingertips, I drown out the sound of transport announcements and the smell of chicken bones in boxes. I write you down and I see your face in the loneliness of late-night train stations, the kinds of places where there's just a bench and an ancient poster and something quiet will pour from me in the dark. It's like you're reaching out your arms. It's the kind of stillness we all long for every day. I write it down so it won't fade. I try and write the sounds my heart has made, the lines on my palms, the songs that boys have played me. I write of all the places I've held somebody, Hackney Spires and Kensal Rise and the starlings over the sea, and I remember the shapes of their shoulder blades. I hope that they remember me. I write of all we've lost and all we've still got yet to come, the lines around the eyes of those I've loved like borrowed books. I write down the old boys in pubs, faces like scripts, scarecrows stuffed with Rizzlers and old betting slips. I imagine their stories. I want to know how they've lived. I am at the mouth of the world just staring in. So I write to find a version of myself I'm not at odds with. Thank you. Thank you so much. So what you heard just then is a poem that I wrote called Why I Write. And the reason why I chose to do that poem is because it articulates what I want to say today in this talk. There's a line in the poem that goes, "In this world, we so rarely open our hands to the sky to ask for help." It's really easy to feel like we live in a world where it's not okay to be not okay, where we so often bottle things up and brush things off instead of being open about how we're feeling. And I think this can have really damaging implications. Topics such as mental health and suicide and depression and bereavement are inherently uncomfortable issues to talk about. In fact, generally, we as a society don't like to talk about how we're feeling. We equate strength with silence and this idea of coping and getting on with it. But I think that this silence can actually place barriers in front of people that are suffering for any number of reasons, whether they've been bereaved or whether they're depressed or just not coping very well with the world. But I believe that the real bravery lies in sharing our stories with each other and reaching out and talking about these things. And the more that we talk about them, the less they will become a social taboo. So I do this through my writing. I share my stories through my writing, but I think there's a massive value in all forms of creative expression. I think creativity can be transformative. I think it can allow us to access feelings that we often deny ourselves. I think there are some things that are so massive, they can only really be expressed through something creative. And that's why I think everybody should incorporate some level of creativity into their lives. When people don't have an outlet for their feelings, it can have a really negative impact on them. But making your emotions tangible through expressing them creatively can empower people to confront and contain otherwise abstract or daunting feelings. I want to promote this ideology because I believe it's a really important way that we as a society can help people suffering. I don't think there's enough value placed on how creative self-expression can heal. Some people don't believe they have access to a creative outlet. Some people don't think that creativity is for them, but I think there are ways that we can all include it in our everyday lives. So try writing down how you feel, try drawing it, try going on a long walk and walk it out of you and walk for hours, or cook something delicious. Be creative in whatever way feels right to you. Creativity doesn't have to be an inaccessible practice reserved for a privileged few. I think it's about allowing yourself the time to feel it and to think it and to speak it and to get it out. Most importantly, talk about how you're feeling and share your stories with each other. Opening up like that will only serve to emphasize the links that we all share. These things are universal. So when we hide these feelings and feel shameful about them and see them as signs of weakness, we're polarizing ourselves, and equally we're polarizing other people. So I share through writing. I write about loss and what scares me. I write stories, I imagine, I comment, and I write what I've seen in the hope that people will find comfort in it. I know I find comfort in it. Writing is my time to sit and allow my feelings to come to the surface so that I don't drown in them later. When I first started writing, somebody said to me that they wrote to help them figure out what's going on in their head, to make sense of what's going on in their head. And similarly, the writer Joan Didion wrote in an essay titled Why I Write, which is where I got the title for my earlier poem from. I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see and what it means, what I want and what I fear. I can't explain the feeling that I get when I write, when I've taken something that's chaotic in my head and crafted it into something tangible. It calms me down, it allows me to process and reconcile. It helps me explore the space that I exist in, the world around me, the people around me. Like T.S. Eliot said, we shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive at the place we started, but know that place for the first time. This idea of writing and being open became even more relevant to me 3 years ago because I lost my older brother to suicide, and it really heightened my awareness of how stigmatized mental health is as a subject. Writing for me was fundamental in coping with his loss. In the years after he died, I wrote a one-woman spoken word theatre piece called Finding Home. And Finding Home talks about loss and bereavement and our attitudes towards mental health, but equally what it's like growing up as a 20-something woman in the wake of all of those things. And Finding Home is a really important example of everything that I've spoken about here today. How writing, telling my story and being open not only helped me immeasurably, but how I hope it will also help other people by showing it's okay to be vulnerable. I hope that they'll hear my story and find reflections of themselves within it and be comforted. This is a section from Finding Home that appears in the second half of the play, talking about loss and all the complicated, conflicting feelings that come with that. I'll leave you with this and encourage you to be open and creative in whatever way feels right to you. I wanted to watch lines in Leo's face start with a suggestion, then entrench themselves in the places where you smile. Then to see his hair start to grey around the ears like silver stars in jet black. A breathing paradox, telling me to give up smoking with a fag in his hand, the centre of attention in any room. Losing him was like the feeling of finishing the last page of an all-consuming book I had been reading him for the longest time. It consumed me, filled my mind. So turning the page to find the last page blank took my breath away. The worst thing I think about losing someone is the fear that you'll forget them, because you don't keep scrapbooks of anecdotes or photos predicting the knowledge they'll be gone before you've had a chance to exhale. You don't have time to remember everything, and you can't. And sometimes it's only the dark things you remember, the times he pushed you down the stairs or claimed he didn't love you or drank himself into a corner and waded into the sea, but he meant everything to me. Your mind will try and override the times you rubbed his shoulders for hours because he felt so sad, or the times you invented worlds and restaurants and stories for stuffed toys and 90s house tunes and bike rides and dressing up in things we bought from charity shops and songs we made up on road trips we humoured our dad with, that one about Stratford-on-Avon, and that time in Devon, and that time I bit his thumb so hard fighting for a pog, and that time he came out. And he was happy about it for once, and we pretended that he'd get a boyfriend and we'd all do lunch and car journeys and cassette tapes and sleeping top to toe and crying about Titanic and playing Mario and drinking red wine on Borough Street. And you hear weird things about memory, how you're just remembering the memory and not what actually happened, and I can't stand the thought that I am making up our moments, our bangers and mash, that I am writing you instead of living you, that I can't remember everything because it's impossible to, that you're not immediate to me anymore. I want to live with you again so I don't have to look back, so it's right here with me. I wish that you were here with me. I wish that you were here. I can't package this up nicely. I know for me the only thing that blunts the edges is writing about it. I have to do this. People are fragile. Some people don't have iron rods to hold them up. And sometimes the world makes you think there's so much bad in it. And people are breaking and people are splintering and we're just having to watch it. But then I feel you with me. And only the good bits. Or I meet the people that hold me together and I write with them and they show me their bruises. They show me their purples and their blues, and it is hills and oceans miles deep, and it's cold tea and sleep, and it's old CDs and nosebleeds, it's grazes, it's nighttime, it's drizzle, it's beats. It's everything enormous. I feel like when it comes to you, words fail me. So I just carry you with me.